You're applauding the newest member of the class of 2015 of the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame, by the way.
Thank you. Nice showing my age.
Another round of applause, yes.
I'm 20.
Now, you're showing your talent.
Okay, first thing, wear pants when you do.
We have to say hi
Camera.
at Turner Atlanta. Hi, down there
Yes.
to Atlanta. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Trey Turner and Heather Baldino for getting that set up for us. So welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
For those that don't know Donna, she's the president of ad sales for Turner, formerly the president of activation, investment, and operations at MediaVest, has managed billions of dollars of media investment in the industry, and has just come off a very exciting upfront period. And for those that don't know Turner, you've got a few brands.
Just started.
Well, yes, the cycle started. The showcasing.
Yes.
And I'm sure everyone knows of Turner. Have you ever met Ted? I was going to ask you that.
I have, when
You
he
have?
was trying to get me to buy Turner.
There you go.
In the,
So we'll save that for maybe a question at the end, an insight about Ted. But of course, it's CNN, TBS, TNT, True TV, Adult Swim, Boomerang. What am I missing? There's a few others out there. iStream, Bleacher Report. I mean, great properties. Carrying things like Major League Baseball, the NBA, and of course March Madness. Did anything interesting happen at the end of March Madness this year? It was just
Little
probably
final
the best
shot,
ending you
right?
could probably ever have.
yeah.
So just great properties, and such an exciting time. So let's touch on a couple of the shifts that Christina mentioned. And of course, there's a lot of transformation going on in the consumer experience, right? Ultimately, it's always about the experience. And there's a lot of ways to impact the experience. It could be content, it could be the way you distribute the content, or it could be the way in which the marketers and your clients engage with the consumers. So let's go back to content first. If you reflect, or as you reflect on perhaps even the upfront cycle that you're in, and the content that you're producing and offering, how are you and your clients, the advertisers, reacting to content these days?
Yeah. You know, Turner, even Time Warner has been a content company. That's not changing, and with content now being king, and we see it with the proliferation of Amazon and Netflix and Hulu, content is still at the core of everything we do, which was amazing. And there's so much of it, which is very positive for our company. What we need to be doing a lot more of is focusing on what content and what that consumer experience is within the content. And Christina did some amazing slides there, which I want to get my hand on. But the consumer is in control of that content, right? So what we have to do and what we've been focusing on is figuring out how to take the content and distribute it on all the platforms that the new consumer is now having more access to. So what marketers, I think, need to do a better job of, and I think they're trying to crack the code, and mobile obviously was really big with those information, is I don't know if marketers yet know and have figured out how to get to that consumer on the mobile device within the content that we're providing.
Right. Do you have an example with some of your new shows and maybe even E-League I didn't mention,
Yep.
that put a spotlight on that changing and shifting relationship?
Yeah, I mean, content right now, because there's so much of it, we need to figure out and crack the code of what the fan base is. Everything that we do with content needs to now have the passion in the fan base. There's so much conversation about mobile and social. And what's amazing about that is that TV is at the core of that social conversation. So again, Christina's like, TV's not dead. It's not. It's now resonating with marketers to have that social conversation translate. So we need that content like E-League, who has an unbelievable fan base from 18 to 30-year-olds who you wouldn't believe are literally sitting here watching other people game. So we need to find that next generation of what that fan and passion base is and create the content around it, live or not live.
I heard a great quote from the upfronts: television is the new television. Do you believe in that?
Yeah. What's old again is new again.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, you talked about consumer experience, right? And everything that Turner now is doing, from the CEO of John Martin all the way down to ad sales, and this is not just an ad sales initiative, everything that we are doing is with the lens of putting the consumer and the consumer experience at the center. So from an advertising perspective, from content that we're investing in, from companies that we may want to partner with, it's really resonating with where and what does the consumer want. And from a media company, I will tell you, that's probably not the vision or the mindset that any media company probably had in its infancy stage. You know, it was always a sales-driven organization. Now it's about the consumer and how the consumer is experiencing that content, and we need to change it.
Well, you're also changing the way you're selling your content,
Yes.
both in terms of the ad loads
Yep.
and in terms of the, I guess, the proposition you're putting in front of your potential sponsors and current sponsors. Can you give an example or two of how it's shifting?
You know, it's not brain surgery that there's a lot of outlets out there right now, and the consumer is in control of the content they want to watch, right? And it's on the mobile device, but it's on anything, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Turner, Viacom. I mean, it just goes on and on. Our competitive set now is just broadened in so many different places. What has happened is the commercial load and the experience is actually not so desirable. You know, they're looking at television, if you will, and looking at it and going, really? How much content is there to commercials? And we've all done it to ourselves, you know, keeping costs, you know, relatively reasonable, you know, these years as it's been going. But it's time to change. So we have made a very big concerted effort to start taking our commercial loads down. Not an easy proposition financially, but what we're doing
What was that
is,
conversation like?
yeah, that was
that
great.
First one.
Yeah, go to David Levy and John Martin and saying, yeah, I want to cut it in half. Yeah, they thought I was nuts. No, it was actually Kevin Riley and myself really talking about, you know, Kevin's right now, you know, he's only been here a year. He's needed to come, and he's been changing the brand of TBS and TNT. And in doing so, we felt like, isn't it the right time that if we're really rebranding those two networks, why don't we also try to change the experience at the same time? Because you can have a great show, and the content could resonate, but if the experience isn't good, they're still not going to watch it. So we needed to try to change it at the same time. Now, you can't completely overhaul a network all at once, but we're chipping away at it. So we started doing it with True TV. We made the announcement almost a year ago that starting this fourth quarter, all of True TV's original programming will be cut in half, 50%. So, which is huge. TNT is doing it as well, starting actually this month with Animal Kingdom and doing 3 to 5 shows where they're also taking their commercial load and reducing it. You had to get ahead of this because the creative community needed to know that they now needed to write and produce more content. So you couldn't just do it with stuff that was already on the air and go backwards. You had to look forward and have the creative community. Now, they're loving it because their competition, and from us, okay, Netflix, think about all of the people in the landscape now buying content and trying to produce content on what outlets. So Netflix doesn't have commercials yet. It's my prediction. It's coming. So they can write more and do more storytelling. So we are now bringing to the creative community a better storytelling experience, which they love. The advertisers love what we're doing because we're making the consumer experience better. We're doing research behind the scenes and sharing it with them that it is raising ad effectiveness onto their commercials, and now the consumer is getting a better experience.
So that's where I wanted to go to the effectiveness, because to offset the decrease in inventory that you can sell, you've got to increase
The value.
And the rates.
Correct.
So how do you prove that to them?
So we have partnered with outside companies, not just ourselves, where we've been doing a lot of research and doing a lot of testing, because a lot of the questions are, you know, what is the right ad load? Right? You really don't know. I mean, it's all assumptions. But should you have 5 breaks? Should you have 3 breaks? Should you have 3 breaks that are longer with commercials, or should you have 5 shorter ones because they're used to a quick fix? The other thing that we really believe in, and this is crucial, is it's not just the reduction of the ads. It's also the storytelling and the messaging in the ads. And we believe that the marketers also have an obligation from a messaging and a storytelling to have the ads be a little bit more effective for their brands, because consumers, what we're finding is that they feel that it's intrusive, that it's really not as entertaining as it once was.
Right.
And so we're creating we're calling them, native ad with our branded content, and we're trying to do a lot more storytelling within the breaks. So now if we have a 2-minute break, we are having advertisers raise their hand, maybe take some of the digital content, that they're doing some amazing content within digital in messaging, but they're not bringing it to the linear experience. Now, it's because there's a cost.
Right.
We're proving how much the ad effectiveness and their brand recall is rising, and so they will now pay for that value, and it's worth the premium because they're now getting it on the other end.
And do you know your audience better as well? Are you
We
getting
do.
better data? Can you speak to that a little
We
bit?
do. I mean, definitely traditional media companies, when we used to do, sweepstakes, or, you go to Conan and you do, we would never collect anything. Everything was trashed. We didn't know to do it. Now we are collecting it. We created our own DMP. We have our own data cloud, so we are now collecting our own data, in a lot of areas and utilizing it. So marketers are looking for that personalization. They're looking for that digital personalization, which is why there are dollars going into that space, and they should. We are now bringing that personalization to the linear aspect as well, because they don't want to and shouldn't be buying us just on adults 18 to 49 or 25-54. There is not a 25-year-old and a 54-year-old who has the same experience or the same viewing habits and have the same experience in what they're doing with products. But we buy, traditionally, 25-54. That has to change. So we are now bringing audience buying to them from a linear perspective. Very difficult.
Right.
Our back rooms are not set up for this. So there's a whole transformation and evolution that has to happen within all the media companies for this to take place.
So let's go to that. There was a report issued yesterday, we talked about this a little earlier, from the ANA about transparency in media.
Yeah.
It's pretty critical.
Yeah.
But as you look forward in the relationship between the three legs in the stool, the marketers and their hundreds of billions of dollars of investment, the agencies who they entrust with that and steward that investment, and yourselves who then take and present their messages. As you look forward, as an executive, one of the legs in the stool, what would you like to see change to
Yeah.
bring more of that transparency?
Yeah, we've been seeing the transformation happen. It's been I would say over the past 3 to 5 years, I've been seeing the evolution. Being on the agency side for over 20 years and now being on the sales side for 4, I kind of see both sides. So I'm kind of now seeing what my life would have been 4 years ago. But the evolution has happened, and the media companies, Google and Twitter and Facebook, have done a great job. We are now becoming more like a consultant for marketers. The value proposition a little bit from agencies has started to change. And we have now started to create capabilities that marketers are coming to us where they may not be going to their agencies anymore. So for instance, we've created content studios. We are now creating content with our marketers and our brands tied to CNN. We launched Courageous last year. We are closely tied to our talent than a creative agency is. We also can do it a lot cheaper. Again, that's creative agency. They have to figure out their value proposition, but they now want to, and they're coming to media companies to now do creative more inexpensively because they need multiple iterations of creative, not just $1 million spot that gets to be repeated. In the digital space, you need multiple iterations of, and we can do it cheaper. So we're seeing that slowly chip away. Also, we've created a consumer insight practice where we're now talking to them about business on categories. So we now can go talk to a Microsoft, if you will, and talk to them and have that expertise within the category where they're not necessarily going as much to their agencies, and they're seeing us as a resource. So we see the evolution that there are media companies like ourselves that may have a separate practice of a marketing consultant practice because they now want to come to us to help them build their business. That's very different. And I think I don't want to say it's transparency. I think there's a trust and a business relationship that's just evolving in all three of the areas between agency, marketers, and the media company. And the media company might be the middle person between the agency and the marketer now.
Right. Yeah, it is amazing the transformation that we're right in the middle of. I would say probably a year from now, on this stage, maybe even,
Yes.
we'll have a little reflection on what will change, be it model contracts, be it compliance audits, proactive and preemptive reporting.
Right.
It'll be a lot.
Listen, all media companies are looking at, just like, you with your businesses, what's the next revenue stream? You got to look 5 years out, you got to look 10 years out, you got to kind of follow that evolution and figure out what the wave is before it gets there. Mobile is definitely an area that, we have to jump into as well, and crack that code with our content.
Frenemies in action, it sounds like.
Yes.
Let's go to the audience. I wanted to make sure that we had some time for all of you to get a chance to talk to Donna and ask her a question. It's kind of a rare moment for us, if anyone would like to jump in. There has to be somebody that's first.
Sure.
I've got a billion questions, but go ahead.
Is there tension between the full ad load linear broadcast of a show and the VOD experience, which is competing with a ad-free SVOD environment?
Absolutely, yes. Which is why we, on the linear, from a linear perspective, are trying to figure out how to get that balance between, SVOD without some is. I mean, there's Hulu, and you can, and I think everybody's trying to crack that code. That's why we have to jump into this, and we have to take it seriously. Turner was the first media company to announce that we were going to be reducing the commercial load. Turner can't be the only media company doing it, because it needs to be a complete transformation of what is happening in television. So the good news is, and we're thrilled, NBCU also announced that they're going to start doing something, and they're using Saturday Night Live as their test case. Viacom announced that they're going to be reducing their commercials. Fox announced with Nat Geo, and so it is happening, chipping away at it. Again, we can't completely revamp it overnight. Marketers wouldn't want us to do that, financially, obviously, irresponsible. But yes, with what is going on with OTT, with what is going on with SVOD, we've had to basically take a look in the mirror and say our experiences on the linear area are not ideal. And the consumers, in my mind, are backlashing a little bit. Now, if you have good content, okay, they do come, right? Samantha Bee is, our first foray, and with a female woman late night host is killing it right now. Breaking Bad on AMC. Listen, content on linear is resonating and is booming. But if we can make that experience that much better, what are the implications long term?
Do you see people having a relationship with TNT and TBS as opposed to just the show?
Yeah, we have this debate within the company a lot. Do brands matter? Is it just content? Are they just looking for the show? And we believe it's both. I mean, brands do matter with what's out there in the landscape, and every app that's around there, and every subscription. People know the brand. You have to go to the brand first, and then the content resonates with it. So we believe it's both. You still have to resonate and have that brand essence and have to stand for something, and then the content needs to then resonate behind the sensibility of what that brand is.
No,
I mean, Adult Swim is a great
couldn't agree
example.
more.
Adult Swim is an unbelievable brand, which, by the way, has had the limited commercial load from day one. We never went to the extreme. That's because of that millennial viewer never would have accepted it. We would have pushed them away. So you needed to be really careful with the sensibility of that viewer and that fan base on how to speak to them. And we were very, very careful, and we're seeing it with Adult Swim. It's been the #1 network all day, forever.
Yeah, having the pulse of that voice, of that fan voice, the consumer voice, feels so important. And we were talking earlier about E-League.
Yep.
You really went to great lengths to understand that voice, so you didn't insult it, and you spoke to it.
Yeah, I mean, Christina said that, the young, we are all very focused on that young consumer, that young viewer, the purchase power that is happening in that space. but they're also, they don't want it to be fake. Like, you need to be very transparent with that audience because this is how they've grown up. So anything that we produce, Great Big Story is another one that we've done that's backed by CNN but has no CNN logo. We're going into that millennial space in the digital space, but E-League as well. We have to be very choiceful and careful on how we speak to that. They will see you coming if it's not, okay? And they will turn away and you will lose it. And we put a lot of time and effort into that. And also with the content that Kevin is creating on TBS. I mean, that is going to be a young male. We're translating it into a very much younger male audience that looks to the authenticity of speaking to them in their language.
All right, let's go. Anybody else? Is there another one out there? How are we doing with time, Natalie? We're still good? Okay, terrific. Yes, right there.
You talked about bringing in a lot more information about individual consumers. Mentioned you have your own infrastructure, your own DMP. How have you had to specifically change your team's skill set? And how do you begin to flush that out? Because having the data is only half the battle.
You got it.
Great question.
That's great. Specifically in ad sales, we did a complete reorg about 6 to 8 months ago that I've been working on for over almost a year. And it was really crucial that we needed to evolve ourselves. And that involved a lot of different skill sets to your question, because our conversations with marketers have become very different. We are now, I joke around with our research. Research is the new black. Everybody wants to talk about research, which I can't believe, and data. And thank God I got to bring our data scientists with us because they speak a whole new language. They go over there and you're like, what the hell are they talking about? But we've had to bring in skill sets that the company just didn't have to evolve. And we've also now had to start teaching our current employees on different ways of selling and having different conversations. Right now what's happening is we are now selling portfolio, okay? And that was a big change because most media companies, and Turner was one of them, has very specific brands, and you had sales organizations that were TBS, TNT focused, CNN focused, and so on and so forth. Marketers now are inundated with salespeople, okay? Turner themselves, they might see 20 Turner individuals coming in trying to sell individual. The conversations now are different, that they're looking for us to be partners. So being a partner means they want to talk to us about Turner and Turner's capabilities, and then how I can help solve some of their problems. That means that I'm now bringing in people that are learning and thinking about their categories differently and their business. That's a different person. That means bringing in somebody who knows research and the data capabilities and can talk to our DMP, which is a completely different person that didn't have a year ago. So I need to bring individuals with the conversation to the marketers and the meetings, and with agencies too. This is not just one-on-one with clients, and we've had to evolve. And we're in the middle of that right now. Some people will make it, and some people won't. There will be individuals that might not be able to live in this new landscape. We merged linear and digital years ago, okay? There are still companies that separate their linear sales organizations and their digital sales organizations. It is video. It cannot be separated. Right. It needs to be one conversation. It's content living on all platforms. So you cannot have individuals going to sell. Now, certain agencies are still set up that way, and certain clients are also still set up that way. So what's been happening is, what comes first? Do you change as a media company if your marketers and agencies haven't changed? So everybody's kind of been trying to change all at once, but it's been an evolution of bringing basically the entire ecosystem together to have that one-on-one conversation about video and video consumption.
That is a great example, I think, of actually the change management challenges that this industry faces as much as anything, as much as technical content. you're protecting the base, but at the same time, moving the battleship
Right.
while you're at sea, and
Right.
that's not easy. I
No.
mean, a lot of industries have had to face that, protect the base, but also change.
Yeah,
And this whole sector is in the middle of that.
it's a middle. And, I think one of the things that we're doing a really good job of, we've been talking to a lot of clients because this evolution is not just, on the media companies. Marketers themselves also have to change how they're acting as well, whether it's buying linear differently or doing different creative models and not caring about, if your creative isn't award-winning and having to do different iterations, or maybe not doing 30 seconds. Maybe your creative now needs to be longer storytelling. So they're also need to figure out what their new models are, but we're pushing them a little bit to let them know that it's like a 50-50, that we can't be doing all the work. So we've created client councils. We've been bringing them together to kind of have conversations with them, with outside people as well, because it's an industry evolution. This is just not a Turner change that has to happen, and if we all aren't doing it, it's not going to get there. But the audience aspect of linear is very interesting because, and I'm in the middle of an upfront, right, which is very historical, which has a lot of historical bases. For the marketers and agencies to change, to go into audiences and start focusing on an audience guarantee in linear, you are wiping away all the history that has happened in the past. That is not an easy thing to do, especially because of procurement, which is their measurement. The measurement from a procurement agency within their own organizations looks at last year to this year, right? This is all we do. What's the growth? What's the growth? You got to compare it to something. So by wiping out historical bases, it's very hard in the beginning to figure out what the value is of how you've gained it. So we've been chipping away at saying, okay, guys, you talk about personalization, you do it in digital, we're bringing it to linear, but you're kind of trying to live in both worlds. So you're going to see, I believe, in the next 3 years iteration, that I predict that almost 60%, 50 to 60% of my inventory will be sold and bought on an audience basis, not just pure adult 25-54 anymore. And the metric is going to completely change. If that metric changes, and we're now focused on their audiences, we won't be as reliant on Nielsen and care about the Nielsen rating as much. Right now, everybody's just tied to this Nielsen rating. It's great, but if I can help you sell product, isn't that what we're all trying to do? And that's where we're trying to go.
So showing, let's say, an E-League advertiser, not only that you have a 25-year-old, but you have a 25-year-old who spends $250 on electronic arts video games.
Yeah, if we can do this, I want my guarantees to be tied to their business outcomes. That's what we need to do.
Outcomes are a good thing.
Yep.
One more?
Yeah, you mentioned
Yeah.
CNN obviously has a continually aging demographic.
Yep.
How do you innovate in the news space so that that could be appealing to a next generation advertiser?
Yeah, Great Big Story was definitely thought very carefully because, to your point, CNN is an older skewing brand, especially on the linear. In digital, it actually isn't, and obviously this year it's booming, given what's going on. So we've actually been, our views on CNN.com and CNN Political have been out of control. But we saw a white space. There is Vice, which is one side, and then you have CNN on the other. And we saw this space in between where wasn't being utilized at the time. Now, you still have BuzzFeed, you now have Mashable, so you got to act fast because the competition comes, every freaking 2 months. But we see Great Big Story is sourced by CNN, but we made a concerted effort not to have any of the CNN branding be associated with it because we didn't want the millennial to look at it as an older brand because we're not going in that direction. It's all storytelling. It's only video. There's no display. There's no banners. Like, we're making that experience very different, and we did it very purposely.
but it's backed and has all the money and backing from CNN. So the viewer does not know it's CNN connected, but we wanted to create another brand very distinct from what CNN represents to kind of get to that space. But there are millennials that also go on CNN.com for a very different reason. It's kind of like you're trying to figure out, each one is more additive. It's like, add this. So we sell it as a whole, and we could add great big story with CNN.com, and those could be two different types of millennials that's additive for their campaigns.
Your founding father must be proud. What a story with Turner over the last 20 years.
Ted's
Amazing.
great. He's still part of our DNA. Everything
I
that
can
Ted did, everything within Turner, the DNA of Ted still lives. We push the envelope, we take risks, and we're not afraid to fail.
To be continued.
Yeah?
Ladies and gentlemen, Donna Speciale.
Thank you.
Donna, thank you.